Good evening, folks. Welcome to the 52nd episode of the Ken Matias Sports Podcast. I have 98.5 The Sports Sub, Patriots Beat Reporter, Alex Barth. How are you?
Good. How we doing, Ken?
Doing well. Appreciate you coming on short notice. I just want to
Sure.
dive right into it. Obviously, the biggest news of surrounding the Patriots besides the OTAs has been the good old Stefon Diggs video. So I wanted your thoughts and reaction of what you've seen with him being on the boat.
I mean, I think I saw what everybody saw, right? And it
Yeah.
parting with a boat on a boat with an unknown substance. And that was kind of my thought. Like, this is a guy that's a celebrity. He's a celebrity beyond football. He's dating a very famous rapper, and he's been a big name for a long time. And so, he there's a little more off the field there than there is with the average NFL player, but he's also proven he can be a dominant player in this league. So in my mind, he has a little more wiggle room than the average player does. Now, that's not to say he can do whatever he wants without consequence. And I don't think the team was particularly pleased. Not necessarily like the video itself, but just overall the image that put out there. But, Ian Rapport kind of talked about it the other day that the message was sent and he was back in camp the other day. And so, not an ideal start to the relationship. If this ends up being the worst it gets, the Patriots probably did okay. If there's another incident like this or two, then it starts to become a major problem.
No, absolutely. Obviously, he's made it clear that um, he wants to produce on the field, but obviously he had the ACL injury with the Texans last year, and obviously he wants to live the $1 million lifestyle of every NFL player that they have. I mean, I'm not going to say he's going to flaunt his money, but he likes that lifestyle off the field as well. But how important is for him to basically stay on the field, be healthy, because he looks great from what I've seen. You guys have reported, great news out of OTAs and stuff, but how important is he to this Patriots corpse that's really slim pickings on talent?
Yeah, I mean, you said it. It's important because he's their best receiver. He's one of their best players if he's fully healthy, and he looked great running around the other day at OTAs, which is encouraging. Like it's a different offense with him or without him, and they paid him accordingly. Like they believe that based on how they paid him. So tremendously important for them that he's on the field and available. And look, I don't think missing one OTA will make or break his season, but the difference between him being able to play week 1 and week 5, right? If he has to open the season on PUP, might be significant. So you hope he's taking his rehab seriously, and there's room for him to take his rehab seriously and still,
Hmm.
enjoy himself within reason. So, you hope he's taking his rehab seriously. I don't think picking up the playbook is going to be as much of a problem. He's played in similar systems before. It's more getting on the same page with Drake May and that sort of thing and being able to work with him now. He's not cleared for full speed team drills yet. So he can only do that to an extent. That's not something they can truly start. But ideally, you get to the start of camp and that's 2 months from now. He'll be another 2 months more removed from that surgery. Hopefully check some more boxes, cleared some more benchmarks, and they can really get to work with that. So yeah, it's tremendously important for them that he be available.
With obviously you guys daily coverage with OTAs and whatever's been going on in the off season. I mean, how have you guys seen basically Drake May and him kind of mesh heads and basically work together on the new offense that he has to adjust to with Josh McDaniels?
Yeah, I mean, you're asking how May and Diggs have worked together.
Yeah, yeah, I know it's short time, obviously, because he just
Yeah,
got signed
there's
a couple
there's
months ago. But
there's really not that much to go off of just because they haven't been on the field a ton.
hmm
May was throwing him a couple passes the other day, but that's going to come. He's got to be healthy for them to really do that. He's got to be, I mean, like
full speed.
100% cleared. He's got to be doing right. Full speed, 11 on 11 drills. So, they're throwing to each other, which is definitely good. But at the same time, that's going to be something that we see more in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, once he gets more accustomed, and then once they start bringing the pads in and yada yada yada. But I was just curious from being there and covering camp and stuff like that with all the other reporters, what you've seen out of Diggs in May. But I know it's been kind of scarce. But staying with obviously getting a little off topic, but staying with the OTAs. I mean,
Yeah.
how's it been? Because Drake May seems like he's been pretty solid, I should say. Besides maybe a couple of days where it was the first day he kind of had like 3 or 4 interceptions. But how has he looked under the McDaniel's variable regime there?
I mean, he's learning a new offense with Josh McDaniels, and that's definitely apparent.
Two offenses
There's a
in two
learning curve.
years. So,
Yeah, 2 in 2 years. First practice wasn't good. Like it was bad. He threw 4 picks. He can't be out there doing that.
hmm
I thought the second practice he didn't turn the ball over, but he was still somewhat erratic. His accuracy was hit and miss. He was sailing some throws, particularly missing high, which is something that we saw him do early last year, and he kind of got more under control as the season went on. So maybe something he just needs to reset again. And then he came out in that third practice and was great. I mean, that's in this setting, spring, no pads, working off cards, all of that. That's as good as you can expect a quarterback to look in that setting. So, to us, it looks like he's trending in the right direction. It's tough this time of year because it's not linear. We don't see every practice.
Hmm.
It's 3 of the 9 OTA practices are open to the media. So that was Monday. They had Monday, Tuesday, and then tomorrow's Thursday will be their next one. So for all we knew, we went out Tuesday and sucked. And then
Yeah,
he
you
could
don't
come
know.
out Thursday and be awesome. So
Yeah.
it's to us, it looks like he's improving. And that doesn't mean he's not improving. I just want to put that caveat on it that it looks like he's trending in the right direction from what we can see. I know there was a report from Mike Reese that after the 4 interception practice, the next day he came out and was really good. And so if you factor that, you had the 4 pick practice, really good practice, the not so good practice with the accuracy issues, and then this great practice this week, still with more unknown. So seems like he's trending in the right direction for what we've seen, but it'll be good next week for minicamp. We'll be out there all 3 days, 3 days in a row to see what he looks like, and we can get a more linear idea of his progression.
Yeah, after next week, it's kind of a break until training camp, right? After the mini camp,
Yeah. So once
besides some
once they
off-season
leave,
stuff.
yeah. Well, the players might do individual stuff, right? And you see quarterbacks and receivers kind of they'll all get together sometimes and throw somewhere. Usually it's in like Southern California or Florida or
Yep.
something. They'll all meet up, but there's no team activities. You're not allowed to schedule any sort of team activities until I think camp usually opens on that Thursday, right? The last week in July,
Hmm.
whatever. It's I forget, either report days Tuesday, first practice Wednesday, report day Wednesday, first practice Thursday, whatever it is. Like
Yeah.
they won't be together as a team fully from this Wednesday, upcoming Wednesday, which will be the final minicamp practice until that day they all report for the start of camp.
Well, obviously these guys got to be on their own for like a month or so, and then still in constant communication with the team and the coaches. But yeah. So obviously staying with the Patriots. I know you talked about May. I mean, he's had his up and downs, but it seems like he's trending in the right direction. But being at OTAs, I know it's been kind of limited for you guys. How has the receiving group look outside of Diggs? How has the defense look? It seems like Gonzalez is, picked off May, obviously. Like, how has the team looked from obviously 2024 to early 2025?
Yeah. I mean, the
Still
receivers,
early, but
it still feels wide.
yeah.
Yeah, it still feels open. Diggs obviously hasn't really been participating. So Pop Douglas is getting a good amount of work with that first unit. Kendrick Bourne's been mixing in a good amount. We've seen Javon Baker kind of up and down the depth chart. Mac Hollins isn't practicing. He's there, but he's not practicing. So that's another unknown. And Jalen Polk's limited. So we're not necessarily getting the full picture of who stacks up where. I think Baker's reps that he's getting right now are pretty valuable because he's probably a guy that's on the bubble. And
Mm-hmm.
then you've probably heard Efton Chisholm, the UDFA from
Yep.
Eastern
Yep.
Washington, has had a really good start. It's without pads. So I don't think you can put him on the roster just yet. Like I wouldn't go that or when I say that, like I don't think he's a roster lock yet. I've had some people ask me, like, is he entering roster lock territory? I just don't think as a UDFA you can reach that point in June because there's so much more that you have to do that they do in camp that they don't do this time of year. And I just can't preseason games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fully padded practices. So, I've seen guys tear it up this time of year, and then when the pads come on, they disappear. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with Efton Chisholm. I actually like Efton Chisholm. I think he has a good shot, but like I got to see it with the pads on before I say like, yeah, he's definitely going to be on the roster. But if I had to put the roster together today, and it's with incomplete information, obviously
Yeah.
because there's so much more to
Mm-hmm.
go. But if I had to put the roster together today, I think Efton Chisholm's probably on it.
Wow, is top of the, what is it, 6, 7 receivers, whatever they're gonna keep, once the
Yeah,
season
I think
hits.
it's
But
6. So I think it's the 2 guys from last year's draft. They're probably moving. That's how I have it right now. The 2
mm-hmm.
guys from last year's draft moving on from maybe Polk lands on IR because he's coming back from that shoulder injury. But the locks are Mac Hollins going to be here as a free agent.
Of course, good
Stefon
money.
Diggs, obviously. Kyle Williams is a draft pick. And I see some people saying they're going to cut Pop Douglas. I'd be shocked if they
Yeah,
cut or
he's
traded
he's too
Pop Douglas.
valuable, honestly.
Yeah, not only is he good, specifically he's fast, and it's not a very fast room. You're severely hurting your speed element on offense if you cut him. So those 4 guys are on the team. Then it's do they keep 5 or 6? I think the next up competition is Booty, Bourne, and Chisholm. I think those are the guys really competing for the 5th and maybe 6th spot. Booty's still going to be in the mix. He produced last year. He can play the X, which they don't have a lot of guys that
Mm-hmm.
can do that. Kendrick Bourne has a familiarity with Josh McDaniels. He's been good in this offense. They seem to be working well together here early in the spring. So you like to see that. And then again, Chisholm's just kind of popped. And then, where are the spots for Baker and Polk? I think with Baker, Booty kind of gives you the same thing he does, but Booty's been more reliable. So, it's tough to find the edge for Baker over Booty, who he has to beat out. And as crazy as this sounds, the guy that's redundant with Polk is probably Chisholm. And Polk's been sidelined. Like, he's been out there, but he's been limited because he's coming back from the shoulder injury.
Mm-hmm.
So he might have to catch this undrafted rookie because that kid's put in such good work in the spring. So, there's still a lot of time for things to change. But I think it's those 2 draft picks from last year. I mean, it might be, again, another year of wide receiver draft picks that just aren't answers for the Patriots.
No, absolutely. And I did, catch some of the segment with Felger and Maz yesterday, which was great. You had your
Thank you.
insights and inputs. Yeah, no problem. I mean, I love that program. You guys are great. So, anyways, you were talking about the X wide receivers. If you can elaborate, obviously, to the viewers and to myself too, so I can have a better understanding. Like, I know you were talking about Diggs playing, was it like Z and then Kyle Williams, the X? So if you can explain that a little bit, I'd greatly appreciate it just to elaborate more of what it means.
Like what those positions are?
Yeah, yeah, like on the field,
Yeah.
obviously, because
So,
it's all the 11 personnel and stuff like that.
right. Well, you can have that in other personnel too, but like 11 is where you're going to have 3 receivers. So you're going to address those 3 spots
Hmm.
specifically. The best way I can explain it, like, you look at Randy Moss, you look at Julian Edelman.
Hmm.
They both play the wide receiver position, right? They're both
Yep.
listed as wide receivers, but the skill sets are not remotely the same. And that
No.
doesn't mean, either one is bad. Obviously, they're both tremendous players. Moss is the greatest receiver of all time. Edelman's not quite there, but like, within and this is true at a lot of positions, by the way. This isn't true just
Just
at
for wide
receiver.
receivers.
Within the position, there's a lot of positions. Like you see, it's a tight end. You hear about H-back all the time, which is a
Yep.
different kind of tight end than the traditional Y, or how you have, maybe, strong safety, free safety, box safety, deep safety, that kind of thing. So X is, when you think prototype wide receiver, X is your traditional number 1 outside guy, usually a bigger body, doesn't have to be. And this is more of a trend now in the NFL where you see guys who are like 5'10" to 6 foot, 6'1" playing out there because they're quicker and shiftier, but they have those outside ball skills. But, if you look at some of the great X receivers, a guy like Mike Evans certainly is on that
Yep.
list.
Andre
Calvin
Johnson.
Johnson, Andre Johnson's
Yep.
an X. Julio Jones, like that's
Hmm.
your X. Your slot is, I mean, that's the slot receiver. It's Julian Edelman, that's Wes Welker, that's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like that's the guy that lines up
And Pop too, right?
primarily in the
Pop's a
slot.
slot.
So I'll get to Pop in a
Okay.
second.
Yep.
The Z is kind of like a hybrid.
Hybrid.
So the Z is the guy that if you're in 11 with 3 receivers, usually the X is on the backside. The X is alone. The X is on is by himself, whereas the Z and the slot are going to stack. So because you might have 2 outside receivers,
Hmm.
they're not necessarily both the X receiver. Usually the outside guy who's covering the slot is the Z, but the Z also has some flexibility where if you're in 12 or 21 and you have 2 receivers, you might line the Z up in the slot, right? So the Z is just kind of a guy that is going to do a little both, depending on the formation and the kind of routes he runs and stuff. And so Pop Douglas to me is like a hybrid Z slot because with the slot receiver usually, and even within these, there are prototypes. Within the slot, there's speed slot, power slot, and traditional slot. So Julian Edelman's traditional. Jacoby Myers is more of that size power slot. And then a speed slot would be a guy like Jalen Noel, who was in the draft this year, right? So Douglas is kind of a speed slot because those traditional slot guys and even the bigger, like Jacoby Myers type power slots, the slot wide receiver usually is not a guy that's stretching the defense. The slot wide receiver is a guy that's going to go sit
Cut
down
through
at
the
the
middle.
sticks, find holes in coverage, right?
Yep.
Middle of the field, move the chains. There are guys who can operate from the slot, but their route tree more resembles an X or a Z. And so that's what Pop Douglas is. So the way I compare it, like a lot of people lump together Julian Edelman and Danny Amendola. Those two guys had different skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
Amendola was faster. Edelman was more shifty. So they would line Amendola up in the slot, but they would run him vertically, and he would stretch the defense vertically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's more like Pop is not. He can play this. He's going to line up inside because of his size. So I guess technically he's a slot receiver, but like he's almost more of a gadget player than like he kind of supersedes this. And
Yeah.
there are some guys that supersede this, but like he's a slot that you're going to give Z responsibilities. Alignment wise, he's a slot. Skill set wise, I think he's a Z.
No, I appreciate you elaborating on that because I heard you talking about it with the boys yesterday, and I'm like, all right, like Kyle's the X, Diggs is like the Z, whatever it was. And sticking, I know I'm kind of all over the place backtracking, but I did hear, you talking with the guys too. It seems like Maz is just out on Bourne, doesn't want him here anymore, and he wants Booty, or one of the guys wants Booty to be the guy, the guy on his way
I
out.
think it was Polk. Maz wanted
Well,
Polk.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. So he wanted Polk, and then he was kind of crapping on Bourne a little bit, I want to say, too, for what I remember. But,
Yeah.
and then you guys mentioned Booty, too. I'm like, why would this guy kind of get kicked to the curb after him and May had, decent games? He might have had a couple 100-yard games or 80, 90 yards last year. And it seems like they had a good connection, but I know the wide receiver room's a little crowded. So I wanted your thoughts on that, too.
Yeah, it's crowded for one. And he had a decent season last year, Booty did, but it wasn't like mind blowing, right? And you
Yeah,
got to
no,
keep
I
the
get it.
guys and it was in a different system. You've got to keep, there's not like that gives him an edge over like Polk or Baker, right? I don't think you look at that season as a guy that makes him a roster lock. And if they feel like, F and Chisholm is a better fit in the system or Bourne is a better fit in the system, they're going to get more out of him. You could trade Kayshon Boutte. It doesn't mean you have to cut him.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to go. And I don't think it was, I don't think it was that deep of that impressive of a season that you're keeping him. And it's also just a reliability thing. Like he had some big games. He also had some games that he really didn't do anything. And consistency is so important at that position, especially in McDaniel's system. You need to be steady Eddie. You need to be somebody you can rely on game in, game out to be in the right place at the right time. And Booty hasn't shown that. So he'll have a chance to show it in camp, certainly. And I don't think he's off the roster by any means. Like he's still very much in the mix. If they keep 6, I think he's definitely on. It's just a matter if they keep that 6th guy.
Mm-hmm.
But and then if they keep 5, he could still make it, and it'll be kind of between him and Bourne, I think. But yeah, I think McDaniel's familiarity with Bourne holds a lot of weight for that spot, for
Yeah.
that battle. If it was a different coach, maybe I'd feel differently about it. But I think Bourne's familiarity with McDaniel's is going to hold some weight when they make those decisions.
Yeah, because they referenced 2021, obviously Mac Jones's rookie year, seeing he had like 800 yards and whatever touchdowns it was with McDaniels, because that was the last year he was here, right? McDaniels before they
Yeah.
started going through the Joe Judge experience and all that Patricia stuff. But yeah, so staying on the offensive side of the ball too, I wanted to kind of get to the running back position between obviously Ramondre and Travion Henderson. Has one guy getting more reps than another, or it's just going to be split down the middle? And is Gibson still in the mix? Because I know he signed, was it a couple-year contract at the time last
Yeah.
year?
So Gibbs is still in the mix, certainly.
Okay.
He's the third back. It's still Stevenson and Henderson getting most of the reps. I don't know that it's going to be an even 50-50 split.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a good split. I will say really only have one practice to go or two. Stevenson wasn't there for some of it. And then one of the practices he was, I think he was limited. So that's something we'll see more in the summer. But I like their running back room. I think they've got a complete running back room. That's going to be the big question is basically how do they divvy up the carries? Is it going to be across all situations like they've been the last few years? They're going to go back to that early down back, passing down back dynamic they had with Josh McDaniels for such a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see that because Ramondre was a 2021 his rookie year, and it seems like he did well under McDaniel's offense. But I'm curious what the kid Henderson has to do. I mean, electric speed. You watch way more college football and analyze these guys way more than I do. But I mean, what's your thoughts sticking on Henderson for maybe projections for? I know 2025. It's still early, but how much are we going to see this guy on the field? Is it going to be impactful, or he's just going to be on a third down, or he's going to be on early downs?
Well, so impactful and just on third downs or not, like both of those things can be true. You can be a
Okay.
very impactful back because it's an impactful down. So
Hmm.
is he going to, I think Stevenson is going to play more snaps if we're just counting the number.
Hmm.
But in terms of high leverage snaps, third down, red zone, 2 minute drill, things like that, I wouldn't be surprised if it's mostly Henderson. So, some of that starting running back idea to me is kind of stupid.
Yeah.
It's dated in the modern NFL because you can have a back start the game, and then the second guy in the rotation actually gets more carries. It's just the package you open the
How it
game in because
is.
that was the script. So, I think Stevenson's going to be the lead back in terms of touches. But I think you're going to see Henderson a lot of impact moments, and he's going to be involved. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a 50, 60 catch guy. It's going to come down to where he is in pass pro. Josh McDaniels has talked about this. Bill Belichick used to talk about this. Like, that's the last thing that comes for young running backs. And you can't, everybody looks at that passing down back roll and just looks at, how good of a receiver is a guy. And that's obviously part of it. But if you're really good at catching passes, but you can't block, you're not necessarily an ideal fit for that role, not in this system. So
Hmm.
Henderson is a good pass blocker, or he was in college, I should say.
Yeah.
We'll see how it translates. But they're not going to put him on the field a ton if they're not comfortable with his pass blocking, and it can change over the course of the year, right? Where he's at week one doesn't dictate the entire season, but once they get comfortable with him as a pass blocker, which we'll see when the pads come on in camp again, like he should be out there in a lot of high leverage situations.
No, I'm glad because I was hyped when they drafted this guy. I'm like, I don't know a crap ton about him, but obviously coming from Ohio State, being in that Ryan Day's the head coach, I'm trying to remember.
Yes.
Yeah, so they just won the national championship. So I'm like, this guy's bringing winning pedigree to a winning organization, even though the past couple of years have been down years. But one last thing, because I know we're short on time too, because you got to go. But
Yeah.
how different has it been? The transition. I don't know if I've asked you this transition from Mayo to Vrabel, basically from January till June. And I know we only got like a 5 month sample between Mayo
Right.
getting let go and now Vrabel being at the helm, because it seems like it's just totally different culture change.
Vrabel's just much more hands-on. That's been
Yeah,
the biggest thing that stood
I've
out,
seen.
whether it be the
I've seen.
offseason and Forge and Foxborough was obviously great.
I
Look,
didn't
and we'll
finish
get
it. Yeah, it is
more of
good.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get more of those coming. I know some people thought it was going to be a weekly thing. It's not, but there
No.
will be more. But whether it be the offseason, watching the way he goes about it on the practice, I mean, he just looks like somebody who's done it before.
Hmm.
And Mayo obviously hadn't. And that showed up at times. It showed up in little ways. It showed up in big ways. Showed up early in the season. Showed up late in the season. Like that was something that was apparent. With Vrabel, everything just is. It's just a smoother operation because he's been there and he's done that.
Hmm.
And he's not. I don't want to say he's not learning on the fly. It's not like he coached for 20 years like Bill, right? It was what, 6, 7 years in
Yeah,
Tennessee.
6, 7. Yep.
That's significant, but I still think that there's room to improve, especially as he learns kind of some of his players in a new roster. But it just feels like a smoother operation, and he's a lot more involved. There's really not. I don't want to say there's not delegating because the assistant coaches are certainly out there and involved, but like there's some coaches who are the head coach, but they came up as a quarterbacks coach, an offense coordinator, and that's who they're working with. And, the defense will handle the defense. I've seen Vrabel work with every position on the field. Just about. I don't know. Maybe there's one or two off the top of my head that I haven't, but like
Yeah.
I've seen with the quarterbacks, seen with the running backs, seen with the tight ends, seen with the receivers, definitely seen a lot of him on special teams. Obviously he's been with the defense. So,
Hmm.
he's in the minutia. He's not just doing the big picture. He's doing the little stuff as well.
This is encouraging news. Thank you. I needed this reassurance
All right.
because from last year, I don't know what the heck was going to happen, but I mean that's great news to hear Vrabel being hands-on with the guys and being out there with the guys, and he's basically ready to suit up again at what 50 something years old, whatever it is. It seems like he just wants
So
to keep playing.
So they run some walkthroughs where it's like the offense is doing the walkthrough part, and then they have coaches
Hmm.
lined up as the defense. And like Vrabel, you watch he's the back pedal and the trigger, like it's still there. And I almost am like, I was joking with somebody the other day, like, should he be wearing cleats? Because one plant and he misses, and like, but he's right there. Yeah, the former player thing
We'll always stick
is
with him, it
so
seems like.
clear.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's so apparent.
But no, I appreciate it, Alex. I know you got to run and do other things, but I appreciate you coming on my podcast for a little bit again. Appreciate it all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.